So your job's online now, or hey, maybe you became a famous YouTuber. So jealous, by the way.
Hey, where you get that? I need that thing, yo. Bro.
Okay, that's stupid. Or you're just interested in learning what there is to offer in the United States. Regardless, I'm here to show you what the top states to move to are if you're making $100,000. Making $100,000 a year is a goal for a lot of people. It's a sign that you have almost made it in life. If you're making $100,000 a year, typically you're not going to have to worry about a lot of things when it comes down to money that other people may have to worry about. And I get it. $100,000 is really not that much money in perspective of what stuff is worth now. But regardless of that, $100,000 is still a large goal to reach. And so I'm going to show you what the top states are to move to if you are making $100,000 a year. What that's going to entail is your base amount, which is $100,000 a year, taking out federal, state, and FICA taxes from that, getting your after-tax income or post-tax income. After that, if you're making $100,000 a year, most likely you're going to want to buy a house, or maybe you even own a house. And so I took that into account, and I took off property taxes and monthly payments off of that as well. In my previous videos, which you can check out, I'll leave a card up in the top, I used rent instead of mortgage, and that made stuff a little bit easier because I just had to use one number. But for this, and the sake of this spreadsheet, I'm going to be using a mortgage because that's going to be a little bit more typical of someone making $100,000. On top of that, I did also subtract the average cost of utilities as well as the average cost for groceries per month as well. Now, I did use the same numbers as I did with utilities and groceries as I did in previous videos, so that made it a little bit easier. And plus, there's not a whole lot that I can really add in there besides notching up the groceries for a bigger family or more expensive stuff. However, it was hard for me to get that number in general anyway, so we just stuck with it. After I took out the taxes and expenses off of the $100,000 paycheck a year, we're left with net income. Net income is what I use to rank every state, including Washington, D.C. I won't forget about you. Their numbers were a little bit harder to reach, but just for the sake of the video, I know there's a lot of people that live there, and so I decided to add it as well. So, ranking every state in the United States according to their net income, these are the results. I'm going to give you the top three as well as the bottom three and just kind of compare why we got the numbers we did on there. Coming in at 49th place, we have California. The reason that California comes in third to last place is because of their high state income tax. California having one of the highest state income taxes in the entire country, you could probably guess why it's third to last. Pairing that with high property values, which equals a high mortgage payment, is why this state comes in at such a low ranking. Although California has a pretty good property tax rate, that being lower than a lot of other property tax rates in other states, because their property values are so high, you get taxed actually more than you would in other states. Therefore, you're paying more per month, which means you're paying more a year and deducting more off that $100K salary. After all taxes and expenses are taken out of your $100,000 California salary, you're left with just over $29,000. Number 51 on this list is the District of Columbia or Washington, D.C. Now, this isn't super surprising to me why this came second to last, because they do have a really high market valuation for housing, which means that you're going to be paying a lot of money to live in the District of Columbia. With Washington, D.C.'s income tax rate being very similar to California's, you're left with a pretty small amount of money afterwards. With Washington, D.C.'s housing market being a little bit higher than California's, and California's tax rate being very similar to Washington, D.C.'s, it's very explainable why Washington, D.C. ranks one stage lower than California. After all taxes and expenses are deducted out of your $100K Washington, D.C. salary, you're left with about $20,700. If you've been keeping up with the pattern of high property values and high taxes, you probably know what's last. Coming in at number 51 is Hawaii. It's pretty self-explanatory why Hawaii came in last. Them being on an island really restricts how much housing can be built, and therefore housing costs are very high in the state. Having also a very similar tax rate as California and Washington, D.C., it's easy to see why this place comes in last. After all taxes and expenses here, you're left with about $19,700. What is the pattern so far? Well, if we have high property values, that means that we're going to have a higher mortgage payment, as well as higher property taxes. As well as having a high income tax, we're also going to have less money there. Typically, those are the two things that really made a difference in what the end result was when it comes down to ranking. So these next three places are our top three. And these are going to be the best places to live in the entire country of the United States based on our ranking system. Now, Mississippi is actually the only state in the top three with a state income tax. And the reason for that is its housing costs. So the income tax rate for Mississippi doesn't really matter because housing prices are so low in Mississippi, coming in at the lowest ranking state in property values, which means that your property taxes and mortgage payment are going to be substantially lower than other states. This is going to mean that you're going to have more money in the end. And so if you're thinking about property taxes, Mississippi might be the place to go. After all taxes and expenses, your $100K Mississippi salary would be worth about $56,300. Now this next state, coming in at number 2, only beat Mississippi by a few $100s. But regardless, it still came in at number 2, and that would be South Dakota. South Dakota has no income tax, which means that on our ranking system, it's at least saving you a couple $1,000s a year. Having zero state income tax in South Dakota was probably the only thing that was able to beat Mississippi's low property taxes. Because in South Dakota, your property taxes are pretty decent. On our chart here, they're actually more than double what Mississippi's are. I would say these two states are pretty comparable, and if I were to pick between the two, I'd probably pick South Dakota. But that's just me. And if you're talking about end result, after all taxes and expenses, a South Dakota 100K salary is worth about $56,600. And coming in at number 1, drum roll please, we have Tennessee. And boy, did I not think that Tennessee was going to be on this top list, but I was wrong. Although Tennessee does have a zero state income tax, which is probably what greatly benefited it. The reason that it was able to beat South Dakota was because the property taxes in Tennessee are not nearly as bad. So with your 100K salary in Tennessee minus all taxes and expenses, you're left with just under $58,000. Just to recap for you guys, we have Tennessee coming in at number 1, we have South Dakota coming in at number 2, and we have Mississippi coming in at number 3. In last place, we have Hawaii. Coming in at second to last, we have the District of Columbia, and coming in third to last, we have California. If you are interested in this subject and you'd like to, explore some more options, I do have 2 more videos I made, something similar to this. I have one on the best states to live in on a median income, and I also have one on the best states to live in on minimum wage. So if you want to check out those videos, there'll probably be a link in the description below, or there'll be a card up above. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate your guys' support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.